Hello, everyone. I think this is my third Hive, and I've always had a blast being here, so happy to be here with you today. So I'm going to be talking today about where... Is this working? Okay, great. Where you guys can find the biggest profits in a new economic renaissance that we see coming. So I think most people know that seeing a trend coming before other people do is hugely advantageous. It's one of the reasons why events like this are so valuable. And there have been a lot of big trends in business over the last 50 years. Here are a few of them. If you were a developer in 1975, you want to join a Microsoft and not an IBM. If you're a designer or a business person in 1997, you want to join a Netflix and not a Blockbuster Video. And if you're an investor in 1994, you really want to invest in an Amazon and not a brick and mortar bookstore. And so these trends were all very important, but they were all what trends. And some other trends that people talk about a lot are also what trends. So AI, AR, VR, drones, these are all whats. The trend I'm going to talk to you about today, which I think will be just as fundamental as these, is a why trend. And it focuses on this question: what is the purpose of business? So just a question, what is the purpose of business?
Make loads of money.
Make loads of money.
Screw the planet.
Screw the planet. This man's on fire. Anyone else? Okay, yeah, so I see people nodding. So this is how people have thought about business, right? It's to make money. To put it a slightly different way, it's to maximize shareholder value. And this is how everyone has thought about business for the last 50 years. And this idea that the sole purpose of business is maximizing shareholder value it has a name. It's called the Friedman Doctrine. It's named after a Nobel Prize-winning economist named Milton Friedman. And he popularized it in an op-ed in the New York Times in 1970. The op-ed was called "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits." And the op-ed is kind of so crazy that I just want to read a bit of it to you. And it's important to know because this is the op-ed that really defined what business was in society. So this is a direct quote from the op-ed. He says, quote, "The businessmen who say that business is not concerned merely with profit, but also with promoting desirable social ends," in quotes, "and take seriously its responsibilities for providing employment, eliminating discrimination, avoiding pollution, or whatever else may be the catchwords of the contemporary crop of reformers, these businessmen are undermining the basis of free society." So he basically says if you even think about the welfare of your employees or not polluting that river or the environment, you're undermining society. And this is how everyone's thought about business. And it's done tremendous damage. But luckily, this idea is being torn down. And in its place, brick by brick, is being built up a much more inspiring conception of business. And it's largely driven by the young. So millennials were asked an open-ended question, the same question I just asked you. What is the purpose of business? And a plurality, 47%, said some version of the purpose of a business is to improve society or protect the environment. So more answered this way than said anything about making money or generating profits. And so I'm going to show you some hard data that I hope convinces you that this is where business is moving. And I want you all to know that you can be pioneers in this movement. So one of the things I'm going to show you is the rise of what's called the benefit corporation. So now this is a United States specific thing, but a lot of what I'm talking about is not. So in the United States, most corporations are what are called C corporations. And a C corporation actually mandates that you maximize shareholder value. If, for instance, you choose not to launch a new product because you think it'll pollute a river, but you also think it'll increase profits, your investors could sue you and they would have a very good case. So you have to maximize shareholder value. You can't think about the environment or social benefit. And so in 2011, 4 states, and it's now in 32 states, introduced a new type of corporation called the benefit corporation, which actually allows you to pursue, in addition to profit, social or environmental ends. And this is the growth of benefit corporations over time. And as you can see, in I think 2011, there were about 40. And in 2015, the last year I could find stats for, there were over 3,000 formed. This is what we call hockey stick growth. And this is another big trend. Millennial employees are planning on leaving the companies they work for. And they're planning on leaving largely because they don't feel aligned. So this is a statement: the success of a business should be measured in terms of more than just its financial performance. 87% of millennials agree with this statement. And this is not United States specific. This was a study done by Deloitte that interviewed 7,700 millennials across 30 countries. But 54% of millennials believe that business only cares about profit. And what that means is this: millennials are planning on leaving the places that they work. 25% in the next year, 44% in the next 2 years, 66% in the next 4 years. You cannot build a scalable, successful business when your employees are planning on leaving in these numbers. And it's not just the sort of millennials who are entry-level workers. 57% of millennials in senior management positions, this is C-level or higher, are planning on leaving in the next 4 years. And it's not just the young sort of goody two-shoes. 83% of MBA students, historically the most money-grubbing people in society, said they would take a 15% pay cut to work at a company that had positive social or environmental ends. And to put this in perspective, 5 years ago, this number was 26%. 3 years before that, it was 15%. Same study done by the same organization. 15, 26, 83. And this is the key. Value alignment leads to employee retention. Of the millennials that said that they were planning on staying at their company for more than 4 years, 82% said it was because they believed that their company aligned with their values and that their company had a purpose beyond just making money. So the lesson here, if you take away nothing else, is if you plan on hiring and retaining great talent, you should have a purpose beyond just making money. And as I mentioned, this is a global phenomenon. So in the 30 countries in that Deloitte study, in no country did more than 30% of millennials believe that the primary purpose of business should be measured in financial terms only. And that was France, oddly enough. And so I talked a little bit about the sort of talent war, but there's also a huge transitioning happening in terms of capital. So there's a $30 trillion wealth transfer happening right now, largely from baby boomers to millennials. It's the largest transfer of capital the world has ever seen. And millennials have shown that they not only want to align their careers with their morals, but also their capital. This is going to lead to a massive amount of spending being spent on goods and services that are produced with impact in mind, and investments that are made with impact in mind. And just to show you that it's not just the young, again, this is a quote from Mark Benioff, founder and CEO of Salesforce. He's never been described as a goody two-shoes. He said the business of business isn't just about creating profits for shareholders, it's also about improving the state of the world. He went on to say that the Friedman Doctrine, which we talked about earlier, was the dumbest idea in the history of the world. This is John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, one of the leading supermarkets in the United States. He said business ought to operate with a higher purpose beyond profits. And why are they all grasping onto this idea? I think this is the kicker. It's been shown that impact companies outperform their peers. There was a study done that looked at companies in public markets. So these are public companies that had an impact mission. And it was found that over a 10-year period, they outperformed their peers, equivalent companies that didn't have an impact mission, by 10x. That's just like an astronomical outperformance. And this is the kicker to all of this. Everything I talked about leads up to this. So what exactly is an impact company? So I'm gonna go over a few companies from our portfolio. I invest in high technology impact companies so that you get a sense of what they are. So this is one called Memphis Meats. The basic premise that they have is that it's silly that we get our meats by raising cows and then killing them and shipping their meat around the world. And that it's also really terrible because animal agriculture contributes more to greenhouse gas emissions than all cars, trucks, trains, and planes combined. It's really terrible for the environment. So they had this idea that if all we want is the meat, maybe we can just farm the meat directly from cells and leave the animals out of the equation. And they've done exactly that. This is actually a picture of Southern fried chicken that they made directly from the cells. No chicken died. I ate a piece of this chicken. It was delicious. This is a company called Astranis. So there are 4 billion people right now who have zero access to the internet. And this isn't intermittent access, occasional access, poor quality access. This is zero access. And there aren't that many ways of getting them access. You can run lines under the ground, but that's prohibitively expensive. You can try balloons, which Google's tried, but they don't work very well in bad weather. Facebook tried drones, but ran into some of the same problems. And the last solution is satellites. So these guys are building small satellites, about that big, and they're just beaming internet down to people in an affordable way. And by the way, people who don't have internet, turns out they're always willing to pay for it if you can give it to them. Last one, this is a company called Lygos. They genetically modify yeast so that those yeast, when you feed them sugar and water, crank out industrial chemicals that used to require petroleum-based inputs. So they're now making chemicals through their yeast in a completely sustainable, clean way. And I just want to highlight these examples because imagine that you're a business person or designer and one of these companies is pitching you. They can literally come and tell you, hey, do you want to help save the world? Do you want to help end the climate crisis? Do you want to help bring 4 billion people access to the internet? And when they're making that claim and some of their companies saying, hey, we can increase the ad revenue of these Fortune 500 companies by 5%. One is a little bit more compelling, which is why these companies are able to out-recruit their peers. And so I run a VC fund called 50 Years. We've invested in 29 of these companies over the last couple of years, and we see this day by day. It's easier for impact companies to get press because the press loves a good story. It's easier for them to recruit the best talent. It's easier for them to retain the best talent. Studies have shown that employees at impact-driven companies are more creative, more productive. They identify with the company 300% more. These are real advantages. And so we not only see this trend coming and think if you just look closely at the data, it actually becomes pretty obvious, but we're really happy this trend is coming. We think it should come. We think that business should be about more than just making money. And I think the Friedman Doctrine has been one of the most dangerous ideas in the history of the world. And it might sound silly to say that an economic doctrine is dangerous. Normally we reserve the word dangerous for political doctrines or Donald Trump. But it really is dangerous because it's allowed capitalism, which is one of the great levers of society, to point us in the wrong direction. It's allowed corporations to drive us to the edge of a climate crisis in pursuit of profits. It's allowed companies to make people sick because they focus on making money over health. And it shouldn't be about this. It could be about so much more. You can make money and solve these problems. And not only has it caused problems, but it's prevented a lot of people from realizing that you can use business to solve a lot of these problems. And so these are some of the big trends that we've seen. Desktop to the cloud, web to mobile. I hope I've started to convince you that the next big trend we're going to see is profit to impact plus profit. And the future of business is up for grabs, so I hope you all join us in this journey. Thanks.